Welcome back. All right, news of the day for all you fine people for your Thursday, March 24th. So the Dadonov thing, the league puts the blame on the Ottawa Senators. So when the Senators trade Dadonov to Vegas, they tell him that the modified no trade clause is null and void, that he didn't submit the teams in time, and he did. So he's still a member of the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas has said he will play tonight, and they've put out on Twitter, welcome back to the team. It's still going to be awkward. It's still going to be really odd. I'm trying to think of a time when anybody's been traded and then not traded. The closest I can think of is when you see Lindros get traded twice. He went to Philadelphia and the Rangers, and then an arbitrator decided that the Philadelphia offer was the valid one, so the Rangers one didn't count. And so there were players that knew that the Rangers were trying to trade him. But that's a little different, right? They didn't actually get traded and then end up back. I mean, I guess, did Quebec think they traded him twice? Anyway, that's a whole other discussion for a whole other time. I'm pretty sure I've done a video on the Lindros situation that took place back then. But there's a lot of the older historical stuff I could probably do updated versions of now that I've got a bigger set. And I'll have a bigger set again in May. So this offseason I might be able to do updated versions on some of that stuff. The interesting thing of all this is the NHL doesn't keep track of it. So the NHL doesn't have the no trade lists. And all I could think when I hear that is, why not? Like, it would be very easy then for the National Hockey League to look at a trade coming through and say, okay, so Dadonov's being traded to Anaheim, and then call Vegas and say, he's on their no trade list. Don't you know that? We can't approve this deal. It would have prevented this entire debacle, and then they could have made a move with somebody else. Vegas would have the cap space, and the trade would have gone through. And yeah, it would have avoided all this if the NHL just, I don't know, had the list, which, yeah, which they should have. It's just, again, it's one of those things that seems really simple, but I guess that's where we're at, that the NHL doesn't necessarily keep all the information, which makes some sense. I sometimes think that the league doesn't necessarily have all the information on everything for the reasons of being able to plead ignorance later. I don't know. I would expect after this mix-up, though, that they have to start, right? It's pretty simple. So your Dadonov, your list of your no-trade possibilities is turned in on June 29th because it's due on July 1st. Vegas then just takes that and sends a copy over to the league head office, and the league head office should have somewhere to store that information. This seems very basic. This seems like a very easy thing to make fixed. And I don't know if they're going to fix it or not, but it seems like something that would be very easy to make it work. So, although again, it's something that hasn't come up before, but now I would think it comes up now. And again, I'm not absolving Vegas in this either. I think there's some due diligence that wasn't done here by them as well. They had this player as part of their team for over 6 months, so you got to look into that kind of thing. At the very least, call his agent and just say, so look, we're looking at moving your client, and here's what we're thinking. And then he would say, well, he has a no trade clause, and then you get into it from there. Columbus news. Korpisalo to miss the rest of the season due to hip surgery. Apparently this is an injury that's been bothering him for a bit. Frank Saravelli saying this would explain why he didn't get traded at the deadline. I don't know that there would have been very many offers for Korpisalo at the deadline. His numbers haven't been very good, and his cap hit's kind of high for the numbers he's putting up. So I think that has as much to do with it as anything. Although, yes, if there's also a nagging hip issue, A, that would explain not being traded, and B, it might explain some of the numbers he's putting up this year, right? We've talked about that before. Goaltender, if there's a hip problem, it can make it really difficult to tend the net. NCAA signings are going on. One thing I noticed today on Twitter, and I just want to mention this in a video, NCAA signings do not need to go through waivers before they join the team that signed them. The only exception to that is pro players. If a player is in a pro league in Europe, and I believe it's beyond a certain age, and they sign as a free agent, they have to go through waivers. And so that's the only time that takes place. Other than that, if a player signs with a team, the team owns them. And of course, if so, this is the Sateri situation, right? if Sateri signed in the off-season with Toronto, he doesn't have to go through waivers. But if it's during a season and he's already played in Europe that season, then he has to go through waivers. And that's true of any player. And again, it's one of those loopholes that if the NHL said, well, we'll just do away with that, you would absolutely see teams using that to put players over in Europe and bring them over for the playoffs. And yeah, there's a situation there I don't think we really want to see in the NHL. Anyways, not again anyways. So Bruce Boudreau tonight, it's a big night for him. He's in against the Minnesota Wild for the first time since they fired him. So he may very well come out and say it's no big deal. It's just another game. We're 3 points back of a playoff spot. I'm not worried about where we're playing. I'm worried about how we're playing. All the right things. But deep down, he would like to see his team beat his old team. I really think that's the case in every situation, whether it's a player, whether it's a coach, assistant coach, doesn't matter. If a team lets you go, you kind of want to go in and kind of stick it to them. So we'll see what happens between Vancouver and Minnesota tonight. I think it'll be an entertaining game. The Canucks played well last night. We'll see if they can keep that up tonight. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is returning to the lineup for the Edmonton Oilers tonight against the Sharks. They do need him. And I say that because I think Nugent-Hopkins is an important player who plays a big role on that team. And when he's out of the lineup, you can tell. You can see the difference between the Oilers' lines when he's there and when he's not. And so him being back is really good news for the Oilers as they try to make their playoff push and get into the playoffs. And then it's a matter of what they do when they get there. But Nugent-Hopkins is a big part of that team. Krug is listed now as week to week for the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis Blues have had some ups and downs recently, so without Krug for a while with an upper body injury, we'll see how things go. You're going to have to find offense elsewhere on that blue line. I will say I think Parayko does have more offensive upside to his game than he necessarily shows because he's not asked for it. So maybe you'll see more of that. Maybe Falk ends up producing the points Krug normally does. But I do like their blue line. I do think they should be okay without Krug for a little while here. Interesting, Jonathan Toews kind of confirming what we would have expected. That when the general manager comes out and says, you know, we're looking at a rebuild here, that he's saying, I never would have thought of leaving Chicago, but this does give me some pause and makes me think about it. Now, his cap hit means that trading him is daunting. For a team to take on $10.5 million in a cap hit on Jonathan Toews, it's just not going to happen. But I could see him being moved at the deadline if they retain half next year. But I could see a situation now where Toews ends up moving on from Chicago and playing somewhere else. But it does make a lot of sense. And I understand him not having the patience for a full-on rebuild, because by the time the rebuild's over, he's probably retired. He's going to want a chance to win another cup. The one to watch, too, on this is Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane, it feels like, has more mileage right now to his career than Toews. And I mean mileage left. But we'll see. The Chicago Blackhawks are going to be interesting to watch in the offseason, because if Toews is coming out and saying, you know, maybe I move on, maybe Kane comes out and says something too of a similar nature, or maybe Kane says, you know what, I'm having so much fun with DeBrincat. I really like what's going on here. I think I'll stick around. But it'll be interesting to watch. Florida has a bunch of new guys in the lineup tonight. Haig and Sherratt will both play tonight against the Habs. What's interesting with that is, of course, this is Sherratt's first game for Florida, and it's against Montreal. So who's betting on a goal for Sherratt in his debut? Anybody? No? Probably a smart move. Claude Giroux is skating on a line with Barkov and Verhaeghe. He is on the wing. No surprise. The Florida Panthers likely will give him a bunch of ice time tonight. And yeah, we'll see how he does in Florida. And if he really enjoys it, maybe he re-signs with them in the offseason. Of course, immediately the speculation was, could he end up going back to Philadelphia? Well, of course, anything's possible. But yeah, Giroux skating with Barkov and Verhaeghe, just as ridiculous, the offense that Florida's going to be able to produce. Oh, and they were already the top offensive team in the entire league. So the idea of adding Giroux to that bunch, it's kind of intimidating. But we'll see how things go. Boston will not have Bergeron in the lineup for them tonight. They're hoping he returns on Saturday. It doesn't sound like it's anything major, but this is his fourth game that he's missed. So I don't think they're talking about what's going on with him for a reason. I do hope that it's nothing really major or substantial for Bergeron. They do miss him in the lineup. Again, they don't have somebody who can step in and play like he does. Studnicka's doing his best, and I do like Studnicka, but it's not Bergeron. Nobody's Bergeron, right? Domi is skating on a line with Kotkaniemi and Stepan. So Domi and Kotkaniemi have played together before in Montreal. The familiarity definitely helps at the deadline. For instance, Toronto, you have Giordano. He knows Brody. Giordano impressed last night with how he played defensively. He's definitely still kept that part of his game. So we'll see if Domi and Kotkaniemi are able to generate anything tonight. Carolina does have a pretty strong four-line team now. And last but not least, the New York Islanders. Sad news here, Cal Clutterbuck, who just re-upped with the Islanders for 2 years. He's going to miss the rest of the season with shoulder surgery. So Clutterbuck's going to miss the rest of the season. The Islanders, of course, missing the playoffs and all, but aiming to get back in next year. So let me know your thoughts regarding any of these topics in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. Just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.